Ty Borden, alive. After years of heartbreak, loss, and endless hope, the impossible has happened. Heartland fans everywhere are holding their breath, wondering how a man they thought they had lost forever could return. The ranch that felt empty, the moments that felt incomplete, the quiet sadness that had settled over Amy and the family, it all suddenly shifts in the blink of an eye. Ty's return is not just a twist in the story. It is a flood of emotions, a collision of joy, disbelief, and relief that shakes the heart and leaves no one untouched. How did this miracle happen? And what does it mean for the people who have been waiting, hoping, and living with a space in their hearts reserved just for him? For years, the Heartland Ranch felt smaller, quieter, almost incomplete. The laughter that once echoed across the fields, the warmth of shared moments, and the unspoken understanding between Amy and Ty had left a hole too deep to ignore. Every corner of the ranch seemed to carry a memory of him, from the barn where he used to tend to the horses to the kitchen where quiet breakfasts were shared. The smell of morning coffee mingling with the soft chatter of family. Life went on. Of course it had to, but the shadow of his absence lingered like a heavy cloud. Amy tried to smile, tried to keep the ranch running as if nothing had changed. But there were moments when the weight of grief pressed down on her chest so strongly she could barely breathe. Lou tried to be the steady presence, the rock that held the family together, but even her strength couldn't fully erase the emptiness left behind. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the silence of the ranch spoke louder than words. The horses, sensing the shift in energy, moved slowly, their familiar eyes reflecting a longing that mirrored the family's own. Jack, growing older, noticed the change too. He asked questions in quiet moments, careful not to upset Amy, but the sadness he felt in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. Each day was a mix of routine and remembrance, and each night was a battle between holding on and letting go. The seasons changed, the land continued to flourish, but the family's hearts remained tethered to someone who was gone, someone whose absence shaped every choice, every emotion, every quiet moment of their lives. And yet, amidst the sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope. Memories of Ty, shared stories of his kindness, bravery, and unwavering love became small beacons in the dark. They reminded Amy and the family that even though he was gone, the essence of him lingered. Photos on the mantle, letters tucked away in drawers, old ribbons from the stables. Every small artifact became a symbol of the man they loved and lost. Amy often found herself sitting quietly in the barn, brushing the horses while lost in thought, feeling his presence in the warmth of the sun, the gentle sway of the trees, the familiar creak of the gate swinging open. It was almost as if the ranch itself remembered him, carrying a memory that no absence could erase. And every time she allowed herself to hope, a small voice inside whispered, "Maybe someday, maybe somehow Ty will come back." The hope was fragile, almost painful in its delicacy, but it was there, threading its way through the sadness like a tiny golden line holding everything together. The community felt it too. Friends and neighbors who had watched Ty and Amy's story unfold over the years knew what his absence meant. Heartland had always been more than a ranchette, was a place where people's lives intertwined, where stories of love, loss, and resilience were lived out in real time. Without Ty, there was a subtle shift, a quiet tension in gatherings, a pause when his name came up, a careful avoidance of questions about the future. Even the animals, sensitive and intuitive, seemed to notice the difference. Horses that once responded instantly to his voice or touch now hesitated, moving with a slow, thoughtful grace, as if they too were waiting. And through all of this, Amy carried herself with dignity, strength, and unwavering love. Even when the nights were long and the weight unbearable, she never stopped hoping. Though it was a dangerous, delicate thing to do, to hope for something that could never come back. And yet, deep in her heart, there remained a quiet certainty, a belief that some stories are not finished, and that love, true love, can sometimes rewrite the ending in ways the heart can barely imagine. Even as life marched on, with daily chores, seasonal work, and and small moments of happiness. Every smile, every laugh, every quiet evening by the fire carried a shadow of him. And every time Amy looked at the horizon, watching the sun dip behind the hills where they had once dreamed together, she felt the pull of what was lost stand the faint, stubborn spark of what could still be. Little did anyone know that spark was about to ignite into something far greater than any of them could imagine. A return so sudden, so impossible, it would change every heart at Heartland and leave a mark that no absence, no matter how long, could ever erase. The first signs were subtle, almost impossible to notice if you weren't paying close attention. A call from a distant friend, a rumor whispered in town, a fleeting glimpse of someone on the outskirts of the ranch. It was as if the universe was testing hearts, teasing them with hope before delivering the impossible. Amy couldn't ignore the feeling that something was different, a strange stirring in the air that felt both familiar and unsettling. Her days, once filled with routine and quiet grief, now carried an undercurrent of tension, a fragile anticipation that kept her senses sharp. Every sound, every movement at the ranch seemed charged with meaning. The wind rustling through the trees, the hooves of the horses on the soft ground, the distant call of birds, all of it felt like a message she could almost understand. Even Jack noticed it. He had grown strong, observant, and wise beyond his years, yet there was a restless curiosity in his gaze. He watched Amy closely, feeling her quiet unease, sensing that something was about to happen, though he didn't know what. The ranch itself seemed to share that anticipation. The animals were more alert than usual, responding to a tension that Amy could feel in her own bones. And Lou, ever the vigilant caretaker of both land and heart, noticed small things too. A shadow passing where it shouldn't, a distant sound that didn't belong, a memory triggered by the sight of someone in the distance. It was as if the world itself was aligning for an event so extraordinary it would feel like a dream come true or a heartache undone. Days passed with the subtle tension growing heavier. Amy found herself pausing mid-task, staring across the field as though waiting for a figure to appear. She told herself it was foolish, that hope could be cruel, that the world doesn't hand back what it has taken. And yet, a quiet voice in her heart refused to be silenced, whispering that miracles are rare, but they are real, and sometimes they arrive when you least expect them. She replayed memories of Ty over and over, every detail of his presence etched into her mind. The way he laughed, the gentle tilt of his head, the reassurance in his voice, the way he had always believed in her, in them, in this ranch. Those memories had sustained her through years of absence, and now they were preparing her heart for something she couldn't yet comprehend. Then came the first undeniable clue. A visitor at the ranch, a messenger of some sort, arrived with information too extraordinary to dismiss. Someone had seen him, alive and well, in a place thought unreachable, far from the life they knew he had lost. At first, Amy refused to believe it, her mind fighting the possibility, trying to protect itself from another heartbreak. But the details were precise, the timing perfect, the story impossible to ignore. With each passing moment, the impossibility of the situation became more plausible, and the tension on the ranch grew into a tangible, almost unbearable force. Jack's curiosity became contagious, Lou's careful composure began to crack, and Amy found herself caught between hope and fear, joy and disbelief, her heart racing faster than she could control. Night fell, as it always does, yet the darkness offered no relief. Amy sat quietly in the barn, hands on the familiar tools she had used for years, yet her mind was elsewhere. She replayed the visitor's words, imagined the figure they had described, and felt an emotion she hadn't allowed herself to fully feel in years: anticipation. Sleep came fitfully. Dreams filled with flashes of T's smile and the sound of his voice. The ranch seemed alive in a new way, as if it too was holding its breath. Every horse seemed more energetic, every breeze more meaningful, and every shadow on the horizon carried the possibility of something miraculous. And then, as the first light of dawn broke over the hills, the impossible shifted from rumor to reality. Somewhere just beyond the edge of the property, A presence made itself known, a presence that carried the weight of memory, love, and longing. The air itself seemed to change, charged with recognition, familiarity, and the quiet certainty that what was lost could, somehow, be found. Amy's heart began to race uncontrollably. She stepped outside, squinting against the morning light, searching across the fields, her pulse a drumbeat of anticipation. Jack stood beside her, sensing the gravity of the moment, his eyes wide with wonder and unspoken questions. Lou followed behind, tension in every movement, hoping against hope, fearing the fragile miracle could shatter at any second. And then, in the distance, a figure appeared, unmistakable, impossible, real, Ty, alive. The world seemed to pause as disbelief collided with elation. Every step he took toward the ranch was a step through. The world seemed to slow as Ty stepped onto the familiar grounds of Heartland Ranch. Each stride carried the weight of years gone by, the struggles he had endured, and the love that had never faded. Amy froze for a moment, her heart caught in her throat. She could hardly believe what her eyes were seeing. Every instinct told her this was impossible, that her mind was playing tricks, that hope had finally betrayed her. But then, in the way he moved, the tilt of his head, the way the morning sun lit his face, she knew Ty was really here, alive, standing in front of her, real. Tears welled up instantly, blurring her vision, and for a moment, words failed her. The years of longing, pain, and unanswered questions came crashing down all at once, and she felt every heartbreak she had carried since his disappearance. Yet beneath the weight of grief was a surge of relief and joy so intense it felt almost unbearable. Her legs gave way, and she ran toward him, the wind catching her hair, the familiar smells of the ranch mixing with the scent of possibility. Jack ran after her, his small hands gripping hers, eyes wide with amazement, realizing that the man he had only known through stories and memories was finally here. As real as the sun rising over the fields, Lou followed, her eyes glistening, with tears, heart full of cautious hope, ready to embrace the miracle that had walked back into their lives. When Amy finally reached Ty, the world seemed to pause. They stood face to face. And for a long moment, nothing happened except the shared heartbeat of years of separation. Ty's eyes reflected the same love and sorrow she had carried, and she saw in them the echoes of the time he had been gone, the fear, the struggle, and the deep yearning to return to the place and the people who mattered most. His hand reached out tentatively, trembling with the uncertainty of a man who had been gone for too long and feared he might not be welcomed. But Amy, without a word, took his hand in hers, clutching it as if to never let go. The world around them melted away, the ranch, the animals, the hills, even the passage of time, leaving only the two of them in a cocoon of raw, unfiltered emotion. Jack tugged at Ty's sleeve, hesitating, then finally flinging himself into a tight embrace. Ty knelt to hug him, and in that simple gesture, a lifetime of missed moments was condensed into a heartbeat. Jack's laughter broke through the silence, bright and uncontrollable, and it was contagious. Lou joined them, and the embrace expanded to include the family as a whole, wrapping them in a moment of pure, unspoken understanding. Every tear shed, every sigh of relief, every heartbeat seemed to say the same thing. Ty's return had healed a wound that had never fully closed. The ranch itself seemed to acknowledge the reunion, the horses shifting closer as if to welcome him back, the trees rustling gently, the air carrying a sense of peace and completion. Words finally emerged, soft and trembling. Amy whispered, I thought I lost you forever. Ty's voice cracked as he replied, I never left. I just had to find my way back. Those words, so simple yet filled with depth, carried years of pain, hope, and resilience. They spoke of a love that had survived absence, of a bond that neither time nor distance could sever. Lou, fighting tears, nodded silently, acknowledging the miracle before them and the power of family that had kept everyone holding on. The gravity of the moment was not lost on anyone present. This was not just a reunion. It was proof that hope, no matter how fragile, could endure. The reunion stretched on, each movement and glance heavy with meaning. Amy and Ty walked slowly across the ranch together, hands intertwined, speaking in quiet tones, savoring every second of the time that had been stolen from them. Jack trailed behind, peppering Ty with questions, eager to fill in the gaps of the missing years. Laughing as Ty tried to answer with patience and warmth, Lou followed, observing the moment with a protective heart, knowing that the past could never be erased. The future was now wide open. Even the animals seemed to sense the difference. Horses nestled closer, dogs wagged their tails, and the familiar rhythm of life on the ranch returned, but richer, more complete than ever before. It was a moment that would be remembered forever, not just for the miracle of T's survival, but for the resilience of love and family that had endured unimaginable trials. Hearts that had been heavy with sorrow were lifted, replaced with a mix of awe, relief, and renewed hope. And as the sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the fields of Heartland, everyone knew that life had given them a rare and precious gift, the return of a beloved soul, and the promise that even after the darkest times, joy could find its way back home. The days that followed T's return were unlike anything Heartland had experienced in years. The ranch seemed brighter, fuller, and somehow alive in a way it hadn't been since he disappeared. Every corner of the property carried a new energy. The horses moved with purpose, the dogs bounced with joy, and even the wind felt lighter, carrying whispers of laughter and relief across the fields. Amy found herself waking earlier than usual, not out of obligation, but out of a renewed sense of life. The mornings that had once been heavy with quiet sadness were now filled with small, irreplaceable moments. The warmth of T's hand brushing against hers as they prepared breakfast, Jack's eager chatter filling the kitchen, and Lou moving among them with a calm pride, knowing that the heart of the family had been restored. It wasn't just a return. It was a transformation, a reclamation of love and connection that had been lost for far too long. Ty himself moved carefully, aware of the weight of his absence and the fragility of the joy he had stepped back into. Every glance at Amy, every gesture toward Jack carried both apology and gratitude. He spoke less at first, choosing to show his presence through action rather than words, tending to the horses, repairing fences, helping in ways that reminded the family that he had not only returned, but he was here to stay. There were moments when he would catch Amy watching him, and they would exchange glances full of unspoken understanding, a silent promise that the years of separation would not define them. That love could endure and grow even after heartbreak. Even Lou, who had long been the guardian of Heartland's emotional rhythm, allowed herself to breathe more freely, knowing that the hardest chapter of their lives had reached a miraculous turning point. The community of Heartland noticed the change too. Neighbors, friends, and loyal fans of the ranch's stories could sense the shift in atmosphere. Gatherings felt warmer, conversations lighter, and the once persistent shadow of uncertainty seemed to dissolve under the weight of this miraculous return. Stories of T's survival and return spread quickly, leaving everyone in awe of the resilience of love and family bonds. For Amy, this was the ultimate affirmation. The patience, hope, and unwavering belief in Ty had not been in vain. She could laugh again without guilt, speak without think of loss, and dream of the future with a freedom she hadn't felt in years. Every shared meal, every quiet moment by the fire, every sunset watched from the porch now carried a richness of emotion that made even ordinary days feel extraordinary. Yet, amid the joy, there were subtle reminders of the past that demanded reflection. The years of absence had changed everyone. Ty had faced struggles no one knew about. Amy had grown stronger through grief. Jack had matured in ways forced by circumstance, and Lou had carried the burden of keeping the family grounded. Healing, they realized, would not be instantaneous. There were quiet moments when Ty would stare at the horizon, remembering battles fought in silence, and Amy would find herself pausing, allowing the emotions of lost time to wash over her. These moments were bittersweet, but necessary, for they were proof that their love and connection had been tested and had survived. The wounds left by absence would fade slowly, replaced by memories of reunion, moments of tenderness, and the reassurance that the bonds of Heartland could endure anything got as days turned into weeks. Life at Heartland began to settle into a new rhythm, one enriched by the presence of Ty, yet mindful of the fragility of happiness. The ranch continued to flourish, the animals thrived, and the family discovered a deeper appreciation for each other. Amy and Ty worked together in harmony, communicating through small gestures, shared glances, and quiet laughter, reconnecting in ways that words could never fully capture. Jack thrived in this renewed environment, confident in the knowledge that his family was whole again. Lou watched it all unfold with pride and relief, silently acknowledging that love had not only returned but had grown stronger through adversity. The miracle of T's return was no longer just a story. It had become a lived reality, a testament to the enduring power of hope, patience, and unwavering belief. In the evenings, as the sun dipped behind the familiar hills, the family often gathered together, simply sitting in silence or sharing stories. The ranch, once a place of sorrow and quiet longing, was now a sanctuary of healing, laughter, and possibility. T's presence reminded everyone that life can surprise us in ways beyond imagination, that miracles can happen when least expected, and that love, no matter how tested, has the power to restore and transform. Heartland was no longer just a home, it was a living testament to resilience, a place where hearts that had once carried grief could now beat freely, and a reminder that the story was far from over. With Ty back, the future held promise, hope, and the certainty that some returns